Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Town Talk. I'm City Manager Scott Neal. This year, we have planned a series of Town Talks around this fall's local option sales tax referendum in November. Edina voters will consider a 0.5% sales tax to provide at least $39.3 million in improvements at Braemar Park and Arena and Fred Richards Park. If approved, consumers would pay 5 cents more for a $10 taxable purchase in Edina for no more than 19 years. Tonight's Town Talk will be about the mechanics of a local option sales tax. Finance Director Alicia McAndrews will speak for about 30 minutes. After her presentation, she will take questions. We will take questions. Those who would like to ask questions can call 888-504-7949 with participant passcode 773922. Press star 1 on your telephone keypad when you're ready to ask a question during that part of the event. An operator will mute your line and place you into the queue until it is your time to speak. We will end tonight's Town Talk when there are no more questions, or 8 a.m. or 8 p.m., whichever is first. However, you can continue to ask questions and make comments online at our bettertogetheredina.org for the next week. The online conversation closes Friday, September 9th. Now I would like to formally introduce Alicia. She received her bachelor's degree from St. Olaf College and her master's in public policy from the University of Minnesota Humphrey School of Public Affairs. Before joining the City of Edina as our finance director about a year ago, Alicia worked at various levels of state government, providing budgetary, financial, and operational management for the state of Minnesota. Please join me in welcoming Alicia to tell us more about how a local option sales tax would work. Alicia.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Scott. I'm pleased to be here this evening to discuss the local option sales tax proposal for the City of Edina. During this presentation, I'll cover the need and rationale behind the proposal. We'll dive into exactly what is the local option sales tax, what needs to occur for the tax to go into effect, and the impact the tax is anticipated to have if the referendum passes this November. As Scott said, following the presentation, we'll open it up to callers to ask any remaining questions that you might have on the proposal. So with that overview, let's get started. The local option sales tax proposal is focused on meeting the needs of the growing Edina community. Providing opportunities for residents to get outdoors, connect with each other, and exercise is a priority for residents, and one that was reinforced during the pandemic, where we saw more residents gathering at the various park amenities. The city conducts a biennial quality of life survey that consistently shows strong community support for improving our parks and trail system. So as our community grows, the parks and recreational system must continue to meet the needs of the community. So to put some numbers to that need, the city's population has increased 13% over the past decade. This park proposal aims to be responsive to that growth by adapting and reinvesting in park and recreation amenities to meet the evolving needs of the community. More specifically, Braemar Arena requires critical repairs to continue to operate into the future, and Braemar Park warrants new features to better meet the expectations of residents. Fred Richards Park is currently a shuttered golf course that's ripe for transformation to a vibrant 43-acre park with a variety of recreational options. Ultimately, it'll be up to the residents to decide on these proposed investments. Planning for these investments has been in the works for the past several years. The city has developed the master plans for the two parks with input from Edina residents, who play a key role in identifying top priorities and key features for the park investments. Then in 2021, the Minnesota legislature approved a tax bill that included language authorizing the city to place a 0.5% sales tax option on this November's ballot to finance $39.3 million in projects at Braemar Park Arena and Fred Richards Park. So now, as I said, for the Edina voters to have a final say on whether or not the investments should be made to support a half percent sales tax. So let's just turn to describe in a bit more detail exactly what investments are included in these two projects. The overall reinvestment plan has two phases. Phase 1 is $39.3 million and includes $17.7 million to repurpose Fred Richards Park. This includes adding new trails, pickleball courts, and a basketball court. There would be natural restoration to the park. There would be inclusive playgrounds, a new pavilion, and an expansive lawn area. And then, of course, it would also include new lighting, seating, and general park infrastructure and parking. Phase 1 also includes $8.1 million to invest in Braemar Park. Some of the investments include a new trail system for walking, biking, and cross-country skiing. There would be a new playground and pickleball, and a platform tennis court. There would also be upgrades to the baseball complex. Also at Braemar Park, there would be restoration to the natural land and resources and improved parking. Phase 1 also includes $13.5 million to update Braemar Arena. Some of the updates include kind of the general infrastructure to the building, such as heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system, updates to the roof, and improved energy efficiency. There would also be upgrades to the restrooms, the locker rooms, the rink surfaces, and the rink cooling system. This is just phase 1 of the project. There's also phase 2 that is planned for, that is not currently on the ballot, but is part of the overall project. And this would be an expansion to Braemar Arena. It includes a 4th sheet of ice, a safe drop-off and pickup area, and a larger lobby and parking. This portion of the project still requires legislative approval during the 2023 Minnesota legislative session. And it would have to be approved by that legislature before it could go before Edina residents for a vote. So now that we've talked about the projects being proposed, let's now turn to the financing of the proposal with the local option sales tax. At a very high level, Minnesota statute chapter 297A allows local jurisdictions to pursue local sales tax to finance capital projects of regional significance. And this chapter of law also sets the rules and procedures for the creation of the local sales tax, some of which we'll cover here. One of those rules is that if a local sales tax is approved by voters, it must be applied to the state sales tax, and it cannot exceed 1.5%. The City of Edina's proposal here is for just 0.5%. Some common examples of things that can be financed with the sales tax are parks and recreation facilities, such as the Edina proposal, courthouses and jails, community centers, water and sewer treatment facilities, public libraries, and public safety buildings. Here, I'd just like to turn quickly and do a quick review of the current sales tax in Edina. So, as we said, state statute directs how sales tax is applied. And currently, there is a state sales tax that is applied to many retail sales of goods and services, and the revenue from the sales tax supports state government operations and programming. So the current state sales tax rate is 6.875%. Major categories of exemptions of the sales tax include clothing, grocery items, prescription and over-the-counter drugs, and then personal, professional, and taxable services. State law also allows counties to impose a local sales tax to fund transportation and transit programs. There are currently 53 counties that have such authority, including Hennepin County. So in Edina, there is the state income tax and the Hennepin County tax at 0.65%, for a total of 7.525% is the current local tax rate for sales tax in Edina. So How would LOST be applied, local option sales tax, if it were to pass? The proposed local option sales tax would apply to the exact same goods and services as the state's general sales tax. So this means taxable sales that are made in Edina, when items are picked up or delivered to Edina, or when taxable services are performed within the city limits. A taxable service is subject to the local sales tax if more than one half of that service is based on the cost is performed within the local jurisdiction. There are a handful of exemptions that we won't go through here, generally directed more towards businesses. The Department of Revenue's website has a lot of great information if there are questions about specific exemptions. There's also the complementary use tax, which is important to keep in mind, and this is the counterpart to the state sales tax. This applies when residents make purchases from sellers that are located outside of the local tax jurisdiction. The use tax and sales tax rates are the same and have the same exemptions, but the real intent here is to remove the disadvantage for local businesses who are trying to compete with others that aren't required to collect the local sales tax, and this is generally in the e-commerce space. So there is a kind of a lengthy statutory process in implementing a local option sales tax that's directed by law, and it involves approval from 3 levels of governance. First is City Council, and this step has already occurred in the City of Edina. City Council approved a local resolution that allows the city to go forward and request then from the state legislature approval to authorize the jurisdiction to present the proposal to voters. So if steps 1 and 2 have occurred, there's a local resolution passed by a city council, and then the state legislature approved the proposal as well. And now we are at step 3, which is the voters in Edina. And if a majority of the voters approve the referendum, then the city will need to file an ordinance and a certificate with the Minnesota Secretary of State. And then there's, of course, a process with the Minnesota Department of Revenue for the tax to be implemented. The Department of Revenue would actually collect the tax. It wouldn't be the city itself. And therefore, there would be a process of filing this documentation at least 90 days before we would start the new local sales tax. So if the referendum is approved by a majority of voters, this means that the earliest the tax could go into effect would be April of 2023. So what exactly is going to be on the ballot? There are 2 projects and therefore 2 questions for voters to consider in November. The first is regarding Braemar Park and Arena project. And the question is asking if the voters would approve $21.6 million in improvements at the park and arena. And then the second question is if voters would approve the 1/2 of 1% sales tax for $17.7 million in improvements at Fred Richards Park. I think it's very important to emphasize here that if voters approve one or both of the questions, the tax rate will still be 1/2 of 1%. In other words, approval of both questions would not have the additive effect of having it be 1%. It would still be 0.5% that would be collected if one or both of the questions are approved. So why use a sales tax to finance these 2 significant investments in the city? The answer is that City Council concluded that a sales tax option was the best choice to finance this investment plan because the cost is spread among residents and non-residents. According to the research conducted by the University of Minnesota Extension Center, 60% of the 0.5% sales tax would be paid by non-residents of purchases made within city limits. So looking at the overall project of phase 1 and phase 2 of $64.6 million, 60% or 39 million would be paid for by non-residents based on the research from the U of M. Looking at the average cost then of the sales tax per resident, we estimate, or the University of Minnesota estimates it to be about $2.62 a month or $31.48 per year. So, if the local option sales tax receives voter approval this November, the revenue generated from that tax can only be used for the purpose authorized by voters, which is captured in the two ballot questions. So it would be for 21.6 million in improvements at Braemar Park and Arena, and the associated bonding costs of issuing debt, as well as debt service costs, and 17.7 million in improvements at Fred Richards Park and the associated bonding costs. The tax would expire when the projects and their financing have been fully funded, and that's in 19 years or when the projects have been fully financed, whichever comes first. So if the referendum passes, collections from the sales tax would begin to finance the park projects over a 19-year period. Design and project work would begin next year in 2023. If the referendum does not pass, the city will re-engage residents about how to move forward with the investment in both parks to determine the path forward and if we need to change the funding mechanism or the amount of the investment or the package of improvements. If you haven't already, I encourage you to visit edinaatplay.org, where you can access much more information on the improvement projects, on the master plans, voting information. There's a lot of great information out on the website, so I encourage you to go visit the website. I think finally we're wrapping up here. The city's local option sales tax proposal to fund these two regionally significant park projects has received approval, as we discussed, from the two levels of governance, the City Council and Minnesota Legislature. So now it's time for Edina residents to make their voices heard on whether or not this tax should be implemented to fund improvements at Braemar Park and Arena and Fred Richards Park. Early voting begins Friday, September 23rd through November 7th in person at City Hall or via absentee ballot. Residents can also vote the day of the general election, November 8th, at their designated polling place. So thank you for taking the time today. I think we'll open it up for questions.
All right. Thanks, Alicia.
Yeah.
Alicia and I will now stand for questions. If you have a question, you can call 888-504-7949 with a participant passcode of 773922. Press *1 on your telephone keypad when you are ready to ask a question. An operator will mute your line and place you into the queue until it's your time to speak. And we're happy to answer questions tonight if we can. If we can't, we'll post the question onto edinaatplay.org or Better Together Edina, and we'll answer it there. Let's start.
Excellent, Scott. We do have one caller already. Operator, will you please unmute the line of our first caller? And caller, please begin by stating your full name and address for the record.
Ruth Ann Metzger, 5600 Dale Avenue. My first item is a comment, then I actually have 4 questions. The TV channel audio was not good. It was very staticky, so I ended up calling in to listen and have my TV on mute. My first question is, which you partially answered, is if this does not pass, will our property taxes be increased as a possibility? Want me to keep going with my questions,
Sure,
or do you want to answer one at a time?
Go ahead and let's hear all your questions.
Okay, my second question is, why wasn't Fred Richards Park used for the new fire station instead of spending millions to purchase another property? My third question is, why do some residents of Centennial Lakes still need to fund that park when it's gone beyond the time frame that was agreed upon with the developer of that area? My fourth question is for Braemar, why do not the pro hockey players that play in the Deputy League contribute for some of the improvements, if not all?
Okay.
That's the end of my questions for now.
All right. Thanks, Ruth Ann. I can go back and capture some of those. And Alicia, if you've got some to add to them, let's do that too. The first question was, will property taxes be used if this fails? I think it's too early for us to say. I think what Alicia said in her presentation was that if the referendum fails, we have to go back and re-engage with residents. That will certainly be part of that discussion, but I wouldn't say it's an automatic pivot to property taxes by any means. Your third question, I believe, was about Centennial Lakes Park and why residents there continue to pay a fee on a monthly or annual basis for use of the park. That's a negotiated fee with the homeowners associations and the property owners in that area. They continue to support that to receive a higher level of city services than they would ordinarily get. So that's why that's in place. You had a question about whether or not, why did the city purchase land for a fire station instead of using Fred Richards Park? There are a lot of factors that go into choosing where to site a new fire station. And some of those revolve around access to roads and being able to get to places within certain parts of the city quickly. The location that we purchased enables us to do that much better than a location at Fred Richards Park, that's for sure. And I can't remember the fourth question. Alicia, do you recall the fourth question?
I think the fourth question was whether or not the Deputy League, why couldn't they pay for the Braemar Arena project?
They're certainly welcome to contribute if they choose. They don't use the ice arena very much when you think about how much it's used by all the different user groups. But yeah, we'd certainly appreciate them contributing if they wish to.
Scott, I don't have any other callers at this time. As you know, there is a slight delay in the broadcast, so I would recommend we wait a minute or so before wrapping up. Okay. My clock shows it at 7:23, so I will come back to, it just turned to 7:24, so I will come back to you at 7:25 or when I have a caller, whichever is first.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we do have another caller, but right now that caller has not indicated a desire to speak. Caller, if you're interested in asking a question, please press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. That will get you in the queue to speak. Again, that's the star or asterisk key and then the number 1. Okay, with that, we do have a caller in the queue. Operator, please unmute that line, and then caller, please begin by stating your full name and address for the record. Caller, you're going to want to turn down the remote on your, or the volume on your TV so there's not a weird echo.
Okay, that's turned off. This is Steve Brown. I live at 5528 Halifax Lane. I put Steve. 2 questions into the chat, so if you need to think about them, they're in the chat. But the first thing is more of a comment. That is, the point that you made that these 2 5% questions on the ballot are not additive is certainly not intuitively obvious when you have 2 separate questions, both suggesting there'll be a 0.5% tax increase you need to be very clear somewhere, hopefully in advance, that those are not additive. You can vote for both and your tax will only be 0.5%. So the second question will be, but the question is, will the ballot state that the two questions are not additive? So even if somebody has managed to ignore all of your advance communications to try to make that point clearly, will you have it on the ballot so it's very clear to any voter? That's the end of my question.
Thanks, Steve. Alicia, can you take the second part of that and I'll take the first part?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. That is something that we also recognize. And so the question, there are the two questions on the ballot, and there will also be language on the ballot that explains that if you vote yes for both questions, one or both questions, the rate will still be 0.5%.
And I would say, Steve, the idea for why this is two questions instead of one really comes directly from the state legislature. We would have much preferred to have one question that covered, all of the projects involved. But the legislature it really determines the form of the questions that we're going to vote on, and it really incorporates those questions into the law itself. So we don't have any flexibility at our level to adjust from two questions to one question, or even the language around the bill. So that's why we got what we got, and we believe me, I've been to a session at the legislature where a lot of different cities were talking about this same issue. It's of local option sales tax. It's one of the most difficult parts of it to explain, really.
Thank you, Scott. I have no other callers at this time, so I think you can wrap it up and remind viewers how to ask any additional questions they might have.
Sure thing. That's all we've got for tonight. As a reminder, you can continue to ask questions about the proposed local option sales tax online at bettertogetheredina.org for the next week. The online conversation closes on Friday, September 9th. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you, Alicia, for organizing and putting this together, and Jennifer as well. And have a great night. Thank you.